Ben, thanks for taking the time here in your
Oh, my
home
pleasure.
city. It's fabulous. You know, you were the 24th president of the American Society of Echo, and you have the unique thing of having the 25th anniversary of the ASE and the 50th anniversary of the ASE occur in your presence. So, your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, I certainly have enjoyed the 50th one a lot recently and recalled the 25th, although that's a good ways back. So I had a great year as president, and it's been very fulfilling to see the society grow and succeed since then.
We're going to come back to that in a minute. Tell me a little bit about how you got introduced to the field of echocardiography.
Gosh, well, coming out of medical school and internal medicine residency at Vanderbilt, our chief of echo was Rosemary Robertson, who became chief scientific officer of American Heart, and just a wonderful person. But really, echo is so compelling because it's such a visual field. But reading those rolls of M mode on paper was not what we have now. And it was not as compelling. But shortly thereafter, about my last year as a fellow, 2D echo came in. And as soon as it did, even with the sector technique, as opposed to Roberto Lang's favorite 3D, it was so visual and very compelling. And then I actually did a fellowship year out at UC San Francisco with Nelson Schiller. And the first day I walked in there, I heard this strange sound. And I thought, what on earth is that? It turned out they were looking at a professor of radiology who was a marathon runner and puzzling over whether the pulmonary regurgitation that they were picking up was pathologic or not. And I mean, it was absolutely a new field and nobody had a clue as to what. So it was perfect for somebody whose research talents were limited to descriptive, clinical, correlative research. I was, genetics had not appeared at that point, and biochemistry was not my strongest suit, but really 2D echo and I just absolutely hit it off, and Doppler sent it into another level.
You sound like the response we got in the early days when I was at Stanford with 2D echo, and the cardiac surgeons, especially Shumway, said, now that's something I can use. He said that the M mode echo was like that EKG. I don't know what you guys are thinking. So it's the same thing. So your time, if you were born and bred in Nashville and you trained here, and then you went to San Francisco with Nelson, what was that like?
Fantastic. He and your buddy out there, Rich Pop, ran something called the Bay Area Echo Society. And, just seeing them get together to exchange thoughts on unique cases once a month was, here were the top people in the field, and getting together in a just totally low-key environment to advance the field and advance their own knowledge about a new phenomenon, which was the clinical use of echocardiography, was really very exciting. It was really approachable, and the underpinnings of it took years to work out. Yeah. The determinants and the ways you could be fooled, and the information that it could actually provide was phenomenal. And I went back to Vanderbilt and enjoyed running the echo lab there for a good while, but went back actually to UCSF for a year. I was thinking about moving out there, decided to do a year learning transesophageal echo, which was the next thing after color that came along, and spent a lot of time with Nelson and Mike Cahalan, who was his cardiovascular anesthesia partner. Great subsequently guy. Moved from UCSF to Utah.
The interesting thing is the relationship, again, between the cardiologist who loved echo and the anesthesiologist, the cardiac anesthesiologist. And that's been characteristic of our society, hasn't it? That we've
absolutely
embraced and inclusive.
Yeah, I mean, cardiovascular anesthesiologists have been a major part of the society since it was born, really, shortly thereafter.
Ben, you had told me about the 2D echo and all that. What's the next technologic advancement that really impressed you?
I think color Doppler, because when Bill Ballmer first introduced it at one of the meetings, everyone just instantly saw the power of this new technology to advance our understanding of shunt detection, regurgitation detection and evaluation, and eventually quantitation, although that took a lot of basic research to determine what the etiology of each color Doppler signal was and why it had the pattern that it did.
What do you think are, and I know this is a broad question, but what are the important milestones of the field in your career that you look at now?
Well, of course, initially getting me out of paper rolls from M mode into 2D and then 2D to color Doppler, color into transesophageal echo was probably the next major advance. And working at UC San Francisco with Mike Cahalan in cardiovascular anesthesia in the OR to find ways to determine if left ventricular function deteriorated. For example, when you cross clamp the aorta, we found that if you cross clamp above the renal artery, systemic resistance goes up so dramatically that left ventricular function, if it's going to deteriorate, it will then. Whereas infrarenal cross clamps of the aorta don't put that much stress on the left ventricle and you don't see them deteriorate. So
I think that's a really important part. Tell me, let's just shift gears a little bit. How did you first get involved in the American Society of Echo?
Well, I remember coming to the meetings with Nelson, and that would be the best. Sitting in the audience with him watching. I got to tell at least one story. There was one engineer who gave a talk and was at the podium, and Dr. Feigenbaum, who was a fierce questioner and also the leading figure in echocardiography, stood at the mic and asked him a pretty acerbic question. And the guy took one step back and everybody knew what was going to happen. He took that second step back when Harvey finished his question and fell off the back of the podium. Nelson looked at me and said, "That's what you call getting blown away by Feigenbaum." So
that's great. I can tell you, having been on, having had my first presentation, Harvey was the first person to ask questions. I felt I didn't do it, but I felt the same way. But
don't step backwards. That was the one rule.
So that was impactful to your memory about, but you still wanted to join the ASE, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, because that was totally an advancing the clinical practice operation at the meetings, and they had members that were the top figures in the field, and over time became recognized as providing a standard of education and certification and accreditation for echo labs that was not provided by any other group in the field.
Right. Ben, I did read your reminiscing when you were leaving the presidency and moving on, but you had some important points of looking back at your past year then, and you talked about the strengthening the societies, the membership, the education and advocacy. As you look back now, what were the challenges that you faced and that your year of presidency really attacked?
Well, education, of course, is the bedrock of the American Society of Echo. It's what makes it so attractive to the young members that we see entering the society as fellows of the ASE. But the work that we did was to encourage people to take the National Board of Echocardiography and to become fellows of the American Society of Echo. And so those sorts of recognitions as a fellow of the American only come if you demonstrate capability in passing what was actually a hard examination. And it required real study. And when you passed it, you were very proud of the fact that you were an NBE testimur. And so that was really, we had sonographers, of course, who were involved in that as well. That was not just physicians. And so the next step from assuring the education level and excellence of the physicians and sonographers in ASE was to work on accreditation of labs, which was something that had been an interest for many years and continues to evolve right to the present, really. But now we've just got many, hundreds and hundreds of labs that are accredited, and they do a certain study in a standard way, they report the study in a standard way, and they have physicians and sonographers working for them in their labs who have achieved a standard of educational excellence.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, when you think about the quality and proficiencies and all that, it's really important. Your role, you had a very active role both before you became president and when you were president with advocacy, and all the things you're talking about, the accreditation, the lab accreditation, really played into the ongoing battles with reimbursement and all those sort of issues.
Yeah, I was on the first ISIL board, with John Gottdiener and other who represented ACC, but basically it was an ACC-ASE driven initiative to make an intersocietal commission to accredit echo labs. And now they do a lot more than just echo labs, and we're very pleased with that, but our focus was at that time purely on echo. And accreditation is absolutely essential for validating the excellence of an echo lab. And once you do that, then you can focus on advocacy issues, which are maintaining an adequate reimbursement for a test that you perform with a high degree of excellence and is clinically quite valuable to patients.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you, the thing that I think is fun is to think about is noteworthy memories you have of about the field, your time in the field, any of that stuff, events, people, experiences. You've already told me about Harvey blowing somebody off the stage, but
that was pretty remarkable.
Yeah. No, tell me some events or people or experiences that stick out in your mind.
Well, I guess probably being at a European Society of Cardiology meeting and representing ASE for several years when I was around the presidency, but just being on a terrace on top of a hotel in Athens looking out on the Parthenon at night and just how beautiful it was, and thinking, this is really the center of Western civilization here. And to be there and be representing a group that I thought really stood for something substantial, which was excellence in echocardiography, was a great moment.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. You've had some interesting people in your background. Nelson's an interesting guy. He's a great
Nelson's
guy.
Most interesting. He's really a remarkable part of the West Coast group of echocardiographers, along with the famous Dr. Perlman, whom I followed through into advocacy. And he got me into that business, and he was a very inspirational figure. Nelson in my education, and Alan in working for advocacy committee and looking to do more for the society.
Two great role models, no doubt. As you sit here today, okay, and we're some years removed from your presidency, but as you sit here today and you're active still in the field and thoughtful, where's Echo and ASE going over the next 5 to 10 years?
I would say probably that the work that we did, which was having the Second World Summit in India, was exciting in terms of it making ASE not just a society that assured value in terms of education of the people performing the echoes and reading the echoes, but also taking it to humanitarian stage and moving forward. I think we'll see a lot more. People love that part of ASE actually, and have really gravitated to it. But just continuing to keep us on the absolute cutting edge of technology and clinical applications of echocardiography. I think that's primarily. I mean, of course, I cannot even speak intelligently about artificial intelligence, but obviously the concern is what if the AI can read the echoes for us? I think it'll be something that assists us, and it's very exciting, but I don't think it'll replace us by any means.
I think you're right. I think you're right. You know, I've always laughed and said, you know, at our age, we'll take any intelligence, artificial or otherwise. But I think, you know, I think that it is going to make a dramatic difference in us. Ben, as you look back to when you started medical school, and you sit here today, many, many years gone by, what role has echo played in your medical experience?
Huge, as far as, I mean, there's nothing like echocardiography. I mean, man is a sighted species, and echo absolutely supports his ability to see an image that reflects what's going on real time in a patient's heart. It's just absolutely compelling. When I was a young medical student, I went to the Royal Postgraduate Medical School for a summer scholarship with John Goodwin, the father of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And I would spend the afternoons after our rounds in a session with him every morning, listening to heart sound tapes in the library. And I always remember that one thing that was supportive of it was the display of phonocardiographic data, the two working together. But I think it was that visual aspect of apex phonocardiography and that sort of thing that made it more it really advanced it. And I was so ready for the visual impact of echo at that point. It was very exciting. I've always been a consensus builder. I think when I look back at what I was able to accomplish during my presidency, it was mostly building on the work of the first 23 presidents right through Dr. Pellica, and trying to leave something better than I found to the 25th president, Neil Weissman. But the year that I spent there was primarily proving the value of echocardiography. We had a value summit in Washington, and it's quality over cost. And quality involves all the things we've already talked about, but building a consensus with the government payers. And since the pie of money devoted to medicine by the federal government only gets larger as one unit if more money, like $1 trillion, is poured into it. But if you take a larger slice for a new technique like TEE or stress echo, that means everybody else's slice is slightly smaller. That takes some consensus building to get a proposal for a new code through a CPT meeting. And so building consensus was something, as the oldest of 6 brothers, all born in 6.5 years, 5 boys, 1 girl. My sister was one of the boys playing basketball and doing boy things, but there wasn't much spread there, and I was the oldest, and I liked people to do what I said, but it required building consensus, or you had to fight all 5 of them at once. That was a difficult
Well,
thing.
you did. Your presidency was excellent, and the role you played with the society, and you, like Alan, did a great job with advocacy. But it's been a pleasure to have you as a colleague in the field, and to have been a president of the American Society of Echo. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Randy.